If tomorrow everything you're clinging to disappeared, your job, your family, your religion, your reputation, what would be left for you to call me? Friedrich Nietzsche, a 19th century German philosopher, was the one who dared to shatter the golden cages of traditional morality and religion, places where people are taught to obey in exchange for a sense of safety. Owning yourself, in Nietzsche's spirit, isn't gentle self-comfort or soft self-love. It is the courage to tear away values you never truly chose, to face meaninglessness without running, and to awaken the will to rise beyond yourself, even if it costs you. In this video, we go very deep, from why morality can turn you into a slave, to how to face emptiness, embrace the shadow within, and ultimately turn your own life into a work of art. If you stay until the end, chances are you won't look at yourself and your life the same way again. But if you leave halfway, you can keep living as you are now. Only you'll carry a faint, lingering sense that you missed the chance to face a question that could change your entire life. Lesson 1. Break slave morality. Return sovereignty to yourself. Look back at the traits you've heard your whole life: well-behaved, self-sacrificing, humble, considerate, forgiving. How many times were those words used to help you become stronger, and how many times were they used to make you quiet, obedient, and easier to control? That's when morality stops being a guide for living and becomes a chain. Nietzsche called this kind of morality the morality of slaves. You're praised when you shrink yourself, when you yield opportunities to others, when you know your place. You're haunted by guilt whenever you want to rise, to be more, to put yourself first. Like a lion raised in a circus, it's taught that roaring is bad, that leaping obediently through a ring of fire is good. Every time you suppress what you truly want just to preserve the image of a good person, you are jumping through that ring. The mechanism of slave morality is subtle. It doesn't come to you as iron shackles, but as lines like, "If you do that, your mother will be so sad. A proper girl can't. A moral person can't live like that." From childhood, you learn to read other people's eyes, measure their emotional temperature, and adjust yourself to please them. Gradually, you stop asking, "What do I truly want?" and start asking only, "Will people think badly of me or judge me for this?" You become a mirror, reflecting other people's expectations with no shape of your own. Nietzsche recognized something ruthless. When the weak cannot become stronger, they create a value system to comfort themselves. It's like when you don't dare enter the game, so you stand outside and say, "That game isn't even that great." This is resentment pressed down, hardened into an entire moral system. After living in that environment for too long, you start to feel automatic guilt whenever you even consider living differently. You think it's your conscience, but often it's just the herd speaking inside your head. If you had to choose one phrase or moral label that has bound you the tightest since childhood, what would it be? Try writing it in the comments. Simply daring to name it is the first cut into the invisible chain holding you back. A friend of mine, Jonathan, wanted to leave a stable government job to start a business. He wasn't afraid of hardship or struggle. What he feared most was this sentence: "You're living selfishly. You only think of yourself. You'll make your parents lose face." No one asked what he truly wanted. No one cared whether he was slowly dying inside his current job. The only measure was conformity. That is slave morality. Instead of asking what helps a person grow, It asks only what keeps order intact. And if you live too long under this morality, you gradually lose one thing: ownership of yourself. Ownership here isn't about an ID card. It's the most basic right: deciding your own life without having to ask permission from any invisible value system. A person who doesn't own themselves is like a house whose title deed is in someone else's name. You live there, you clean it, you decorate it, but one day, if the owner changes their mind, everything can be taken back. Who is that owner? People, the community. God says so. Most frightening of all, many people are even proud of their chains. They boast, "I've never talked back to my parents. I've never done anything anyone could criticize." Behind those lines, sometimes, is a sad truth. I've never dared to live as myself. Slave morality turns you into a beta version of a human being, a version designed not to cause trouble, not a version meant for greatness. So what does it mean to break slave morality? It doesn't mean throwing away all values, living without principles, and doing whatever you want. That would only be another form of slavery, slavery to blind instinct. You can begin very quietly. Every night before bed, open a page and write down every "I must" that appeared in your mind that day. Don't edit, copy it exactly as it came. This is how you begin to recognize and cut the chain. Then try living by a different rule for one day. Instead of automatically choosing what pleases others, choose one small thing that makes you respect yourself more. It could be as simple as refusing an invitation you don't want to attend, turning off your phone for an hour to do something you love, or speaking your real view in a conversation instead of nodding along. You'll notice a strange feeling, both afraid and relieved. And one day, when you're about to take on another overloaded task, just because you fear being judged, pause for a few seconds and ask, if I say no this time, what is the worst that could happen? Usually the worst is only a few looks, a few remarks. What you gain is far bigger. The feeling that you just stood on your own side, one of those rare moments you chose yourself first. When you truly own yourself, you can still love, still sacrifice, still yield, but it becomes the deliberate choice of a free person, not the reflex of someone afraid. You no longer give just to be seen as good. You give as an expression of strength and inner abundance. At that point, morality is no longer a whip. It becomes a way of life you consciously choose. And this is only the first step. Because when the chains of slave morality begin to loosen, you'll face a terrifying emptiness. If the old musts and must-nots are gone, what will your life rest on? We will enter that very void, the void of meaning, the void of nihilism, where you are forced to create your own value system instead of borrowing it from anyone else. Lesson 2. Step through nihilism. When Nietzsche wrote "God is dead," he wasn't making a joke. He put the words in the mouth of a madman, screaming in the marketplace in the gay science, a world where the old faith had become hollow, and God had truly been replaced by science, money, and other secular values. The line isn't only about whether God exists or not, but about something deeper, ready-made answers to right, wrong, and the meaning of life. Things that once stood like mountains have now cracked. In the past, you only had to go to church or temple, listen to your parents, follow tradition, and you'd be handed a set of answers for life. Live to do good, accumulate virtue, enter heaven, avoid karmic retribution. But one day, you see that suffering is still there after countless nights of praying beneath the lamp. And inside you, a small fracture sounds, "So, what has God actually done for my life?" That fracture is the beginning of nihilism. Nihilism is the feeling of waking up, looking around your room, looking at your job, looking at your relationships, and quietly asking, "Why am I here? What the hell am I doing?" Things like faith, an ideal, a degree, the right path suddenly lose their power to soothe you. You keep living, but beneath it all is a cold, empty hollow. The problem is this: when old meanings collapse, if you don't know what to do with the void, nihilism begins to corrode you. You start thinking, "Whatever, that's life, it's all the same." Because the emptiness inside is unbearable, you rush to stuff it with fake meanings, chasing money as if the number in your account measures your worth, obsessing over fame as if your existence depends on an algorithm, becoming addicted to movies, games, and social media as anesthesia against the question, "What am I living for?" Neuroscience research shows that when you do nothing, the brain's default mode network becomes highly active, pulling up thoughts, anxiety, and questions. Instead of sitting with them, we stay busy. Nietzsche saw this more than a century ago. When God is dead, when absolute systems of meaning lose their power, human beings fall into two states. Either they panic and cling to any new idol, money worship, extreme scientism, collectivism, consumerism, or they sink into nihilism and live as if nothing really matters, half joking, half serious. But for Nietzsche, meaninglessness isn't the enemy. It's a detox, withdrawal from doses of values injected from the outside. You stand in the gap between the old that has died and the new that has not yet been born. It's dangerous, but it's also the only place where you can truly begin to own yourself. When old religious faith can no longer hold you up, what matters is that you sit with yourself and answer honestly, "What do I truly want in this life? What kind of person do I want to become if no one is watching?" Nietzsche doesn't tell you to destroy everything and leave it empty. He wants you to stop renting meaning from the outside and begin building your own axis, small, clumsy perhaps, but yours. To avoid being swallowed by nihilism, imagine this: there is no heaven, no hell, no one grading you, no eternal reward. Everything ends at death. In that context, what is still worth living for, worth throwing your whole life into? Be honest. Many things you're doing will fall away immediately. Many goals you cling to will reveal themselves as games of a vain ego. What remains, small and unglamorous though it may be, is the kernel of meaning that is truly yours. It might be creating something beautiful, nurturing a few specific people, pushing as far as you can in a field, living honestly enough that you don't have to lower your eyes in the mirror. Then go one layer deeper. If no one praised you, no one knew, no one ever spoke your name, what would you still want to do? This question strips away the stage lights and the applause until only you remain with your work, your action. Motivation science calls this the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is reward and recognition. Intrinsic motivation is the joy of the act itself. Nihilism demands that you find what you would do, even with no eyes watching. And finally, the most ruthless question: between suffering and emptiness, what do you choose? Nietzsche always chose meaningful suffering over meaningless safety. The pressure and hardship of pursuing a goal you deem worthy, of being honest with yourself, of daring to live by your own standards, these are utterly different from the numb paralysis of a life that is fine but flavorless. Look back at the moments you truly felt alive. They usually weren't your most comfortable moments, but the ones that stretched you, tested you, yet gave you a reason to keep going. Try sharing those moments with us. It's a way to awaken your soul, to remind it that there was a time when life meant that much. Stepping through nihilism isn't climbing out of it. It's having the courage to walk straight through it without hypnotizing yourself with empty promises. On the other side of that void, for the first time in your life, you have the chance not only to ask, "What is the meaning of life?" but to ask something far more concrete. How do I want my life to have meaning? And that is when, little by little, you begin to truly own yourself. So now, how will you use this freedom to rise, to shape yourself? This is where Nietzsche offers humanity a direction he called the will to power. Lesson 3. The will to power, the strength to shape yourself. Many people hear the will to power and immediately picture dictators standing above, commanding the crowd below. It feels like a hunger to dominate, manipulate, and make others bow. But if you stop there, you've understood Nietzsche far too shallowly. He wrote, "Where I found the living, there I found the will to power." For him, the will to power is not the desire to crush others, but the deepest life force within each person, the will to overcome yourself, the need to expand inner strength, to widen the borders of who you are. Not, "I must be greater than you," but "I must be greater than who I was yesterday." Look back at your life honestly. There are moments when you feel something inside you wants to burst open, wants to try, to risk, to reach a higher standard. You want to write your first book, push your body past its limits, and throw yourself into a completely different career path. That is the will to power knocking. But alongside it comes another voice whispering, "What if you fail? The way things are now is fine." When you listen to that second voice, the will to power doesn't disappear. It gets compressed and turns into boredom, irritability, envy, or the feeling that your life is being wasted. Many people fall into depression, not because they lack ability, but because they struggle with the realization that they're living beneath their own potential and not changing. Nietzsche saw the will to power as a kind of reverse gravity. Instead of pulling you down, it pulls you upward, not above other people, but above your current self. Without that upward pull, you won't stay still. Society will push you instead. Your schedule, your salary, deadlines, and other people's needs will define your day. The will to power transforms you from an employee into an owner, someone who sets goals, designs direction, decides who they will become, regardless of the job description society has written for them. Notice the people you truly admire. They carry a distinct quality of their own. Whether they're artists, entrepreneurs, researchers, or just an ordinary person around you, what do they share? Discipline and inner capacity. They dare to choose the harder path when the easier one is still available. They dare to stay and practice a few more hours when everyone else has gone home. They keep placing themselves in environments that demand challenge. That is the will to power in everyday life. And you, who is the figure you admire most? And what trait in them makes you yearn so deeply that you want to bring it into your own life? Try sharing it in the comments. That answer might reveal who you truly want to become. The will to power also shows itself clearly in the moments you say no. No to relationships that drag you down, even if staying would feel less lonely. No to pleasures that make you lose yourself. No to a safe job that kills off your vitality piece by piece. Each time you dare to refuse something that weakens you, a small door of the will to power opens. Many people think power is the ability to say yes to everything, but a deeper power is the ability to choose, among countless things you could do, which battlefield is truly worthy of your life's strength. Nietzsche defined it with ruthless precision. What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. Other philosophers like Schopenhauer spoke of the will to live, a blind force that drives us to exist. Nietzsche goes further. He is not satisfied with mere survival. For him, if the will to live is not elevated into the will to power, it's like having a powerful engine that only idles in place. So how do you activate and nurture the will to power in a healthy way, instead of turning it into a hunger to dominate others? First, you need a focal point. Choose one specific domain you commit to overcoming yourself in: the body, work, creativity, or your inner world. Don't try to carry your whole life in one go. Pick one front. For example, you decide, in the next year, I will treat my body like a strategic instrument, no longer a bag that just holds exhaustion. Or, I will treat my creative work like a discipline of living, not a hobby I do only when I feel like it. When you gather your energy into a single point, the will to power becomes less scattered, less like drifting anxiety. Next, instead of comparing yourself to others, create a new standard meant only for you. Not better than my co-workers, but the version of me 1 year from now will leave my current self far behind in A, B, and C. This sounds simple, but it's very hard because your brain is addicted to horizontal comparison. It constantly looks left and right. How far have my friends gotten? What does that person have that I don't? Horizontal comparison triggers inferiority and envy, while the will to power demands vertical comparison. How am I today compared to who I was yesterday? Every goal you set based on yourself, rather than on some external ranking, is a step on that path. Finally, be honest with yourself. Right now, are you living as an employee or as the owner of your life? Look at your daily schedule, and you'll know immediately what percentage of your time is truly yours, and what percentage is simply a reaction to other people's demands, expectations, notifications, and messages. You don't have to reverse everything overnight. Just each day, give a little more time back to yourself and say no one more time. That is how the will to power, once a philosophical concept, becomes a living force under your skin. Lesson 4. The experiment of eternal recurrence. Nietzsche didn't stop there. He didn't only ask how you want to rise, he threw you a ruthless test. Is the life you're living worth signing your name to forever? That is where the idea of eternal recurrence appears, like a riddle that is both philosophical and frightening. Nietzsche proposes a premise that sounds like horror. Imagine a demon comes to you at your loneliest moment and says, the life you are living will have to be lived again. The same, every tiny detail, an infinite number of times. No changes, only endless repetition. How will you respond? This is not a superstitious threat or a religious claim about next lives or karma. Try to imagine it in concrete detail. Not the life you dream of someday, but your life today, exactly as it is. How you wake up, the road you take to work, the conversations that are empty or deep, the moments of happiness and the moments of failure. All of it will repeat exactly, not once, but countless times. What is your first feeling? If you find yourself screaming, "No way," then that is a clear confirmation that your current life is not worth living even one more time. But if instead you feel, "Yeah, if that's how it is, so be it," that first reaction is your most honest confession of whether you are living a life you truly want to own. Owning yourself in Nietzsche's sense is not about living comfortably, nor about living without mistakes. It is living in such a way that if you were forced to repeat it infinitely, you could still nod and say, "I accept." Nietzsche wrote, "This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more, and innumerable times more." If that is the rule of the game, do you dare to say, "Then I must live in a way worthy of that rule"? This nodding is not constant bliss, but a feeling like, "I did not betray myself. I chose what I believed in, even at a cost. I loved, I failed, I suffered, and all of it is mine." And then even your pain bears your signature. It is no longer a meaningless accident. The experiment of eternal recurrence thus becomes an extremely sharp tool for decision-making. When you face a major choice, changing careers, ending a relationship, or committing to a project, you can ask, if this decision repeated infinitely in my life, would I dare take responsibility for it? If marrying this person meant marrying them not once but 1,000 times, would you still dare? If staying in this job meant signing an employee contract here not for 5 years, but for endless copied time, would your inner answer change? Suddenly, reasons like, "It's fine," "It'll probably work out," become visibly fragile, because probably fine might be bearable once, but not necessarily bearable forever. Even small habits can be exposed by eternal recurrence. Each time you're about to scroll on your phone for another mindless hour, ask, "Would I agree to replay myself curled up, scrolling meaninglessly 1,000 more times?" Each time you're about to lie to avoid a hard conversation, ask, "Would I accept living this exact pattern of lying infinitely?" The question shows you which behaviors, multiplied endlessly, will destroy you, and which choices, multiplied endlessly, will build you. One day, maybe today, write out a typical day in detail, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you sleep. What time you wake up, what you do first, how you go to work, who you talk to, what the dominant feeling of the day is, what you do at night, how you end the day. Don't beautify it. Don't remove the ugly details. Write it exactly as it is. Then, place one single question at the bottom of the page. If I had to live this exact day 1,000 times, could I endure it? Don't answer with logic. Let your body answer. Does your chest tighten or loosen? Do you want to avoid the page or read it again? That signal is real. From there, you don't have to overturn your whole life overnight. Choose just 1 or 2 details in your day and say, "If I could change this part, I would hate the replay far less." Maybe it's replacing 30 minutes of mindless scrolling with 30 minutes spent on something you always postpone. Maybe it's replacing a shallow, performative conversation with an honest one with someone who matters. Maybe it's taking a 10-minute walk alone instead of stuffing your mind with yet another piece of content. Small changes like that, if repeated infinitely, increase the quality of your life instead of draining you. Eternal recurrence, understood correctly, is not a curse, it is a measure. It forces you for the first time with real seriousness to ask whether your life is truly worth living. Lesson 5. Embrace the darkness. But do you only want to relive the beautiful moments? Or would you dare relive even the darkest parts of yourself? Your jealousy, your stumbles, your obsessions, your desires you're so ashamed of, you can't even name them. If your answer is no, it means there is still a region within you that you haven't dared to own. This is the realm Nietzsche named, with a spirit drenched in wine and hot blood: Dionysus. Nietzsche never believed in the image of a perfectly pure human being, clean, purely rational, always correct. He saw the human being as a struggle between two forces, the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The Apollonian is the bright, orderly, formal, rational side. The Dionysian is the opposite: chaos, sensuality, instinct, intoxication, suffering, frenzy, nights when you can't even understand what you just did. Society praises Apollo, but Nietzsche delivers a ruthless warning. If you try to cut out Dionysus, you are cutting off half your life force. Owning yourself means owning both sides, not just the beautiful one. Look at what you always try to hide: envy when your friend succeeds, anger when you're disrespected, the urge to control, lust, old wounds that make you overreact to small things. We're taught to push it down, forget it, stop thinking, and be positive. The problem is this: when you try to suppress the darkness, it doesn't disappear. It retreats into the psychological basement, the unconscious, and from there it controls you like an invisible hand. The more you appear kind, moral, polite, the stronger the inner strings become, because they were never named. You think you're living properly, yet sometimes your most important choices are driven by the very things you despise in others. Nietzsche warned early on, be careful, lest in casting out your demon, you exorcise the best thing in you. It sounds paradoxical, but look back at your life. Where do your strongest creativity, courage, and breakthroughs usually come from? From calm, comfortable seasons, or from deep pain, anger at life, dissatisfaction with the present? Someone poor to the bone can become an entrepreneur, not because they love money in a petty sense, but because of the humiliation of watching their family live in disgrace. Someone constantly looked down on can rise into a creative force not to show off, but because they refuse the sentence, "This is all you'll ever be." Beneath many great actions are demons that are raw, rough, deeply human. The point is not to destroy them, but to direct them. Envy, if you choke it down and pretend it doesn't exist, becomes gossip, sabotage, and backstabbing. But if you dare to say the truth, "I'm jealous," that envy can become fuel for upgrading yourself. Anger, if swallowed, turns into depression or explosive violence. But if faced head-on, it shows you which boundaries are being violated, what enough really means, and forces you to stand up. Loneliness, if you only escape it through temporary relationships, makes you cling in desperation. But if you can sit inside it, loneliness can become a doorway into deep inner life, a source of creative material you may never exhaust. So what does it mean to embrace the darkness? It doesn't mean letting yourself drift into addiction and wreckage and calling it being real. It doesn't mean being proud of being toxic and demanding that others accept you. Embracing the darkness means daring to turn on the light in the basement and naming your demon. Don't call it vaguely a bad habit or sadness. Name it precisely: an addiction to social media, sex, food, a fear of abandonment, an obsession with perfection. contempt for your own body, anger toward your parents. Once it has a name, it becomes less foggy. Then ask it questions you've never asked before. What are you trying to tell me? What am I lacking that makes you scream like this? When you begin listening to your demon that way, it shifts from enemy to messenger. The message can be rough, uncomfortable, but it's real. The next step is to find a channel for transformation. Here, Nietzsche meets Jung, and modern therapists as well. Energy doesn't vanish, it only changes form. And if you redirect that burning energy into learning more, training more, trying more, it suddenly becomes a kind of fuel. You'll realize something strange. The deepest people are often not the spotless ones, but those who have gone far into their own darkness without being swallowed by it. They don't pretend to be saints, yet they don't surrender to instinct either. They're like a conductor standing before a chaotic orchestra. Horns, drums, violins, howls, screams. Owning yourself isn't destroying the orchestra. It's learning to conduct it. Knowing when to let the angry drums enter, when to soften the violin, when to bring in the playful horn. You cannot own yourself if you're trying to live like a sterile angel. You are human, and human, for Nietzsche, is something that must be overcome. Overcome shallowness, overcome self-deception, overcome even the fear of your own inner darkness. Owning yourself is accepting that you are a totality of light and dark, reason and instinct, order and chaos, and then becoming the one who conducts that orchestra, not the instrument blown by any passing wind. If you've listened this far, thank you for being brave enough to sit with the unbeautiful parts of yourself alongside me. We've only crossed half the journey. Ahead are deeper Nietzschean layers about will, style of living, and how to sign your name onto your own life. If you want to continue, stay until the end. Leave a comment about the demon you're beginning to recognize, and don't forget to like and subscribe so the algorithm brings you back to continue the unfinished conversation with your own soul. Lesson 6. Turn your life into a work of art. Nietzsche wasn't only a dry philosopher with heavy lines of text. He composed music, wrote poetry, and was obsessed with language and imagery. For him, beauty isn't only in paintings or books. It must be in how we live, how we face suffering, how we love, how we fail, how we rise again. He wrote, "Giving style to one's character, a great and rare art." To give style to your character, for Nietzsche, is a rare and great art. You are not just a pile of messy habits, but a form with a distinct essence of its own. Style here isn't merely fashion taste or a photo aesthetic. Style is the totality of how you show up in the world, what you choose to matter, how you use time, how you face pain, how you speak and fall silent, how you love, how you get angry, how you refuse. When you have style, others can still influence you, but they cannot define you. Like an artist with a recognizable stroke, even if they paint the same subject as someone else, one look and you know, this is his painting. Style is your signature on your life. Nietzschean style begins at the deepest layer, core values. These are the things you won't bargain away, even at a cost. Values like honesty, freedom, creativity, and courage. If you don't name them, you'll easily sell them off in concrete situations. But once you name them and give style to them, your choices begin to revolve around one question: does this betray my core values or not? The next layer is lifestyle habits. How you use your time, how you read, how you train, how you work. Two people with the same capacity but different styles of living will end up in completely different places. One person lives like a leaking stream. Each day, a little time drains away unconsciously, no structure, no choice. Another lives like an architect, setting priorities, creating personal rituals. Both drink coffee, but one drinks to kill time, while the other turns it into a moment to return to themselves, reading a few pages, writing a few lines. Those small details, repeated again and again, create a distinct quality of life that others can sense just by looking. Another layer of style is how you face suffering. Here, Nietzsche uses another concept, amor fati, to love your own fate. This is an attitude. If this is part of my life, I won't merely endure it, I will turn it into part of the work. So how do you begin to give style to your life in Nietzsche's spirit? Return to the game of cinema. If your life were a film, what style would the main character have? Cold but profound, quiet but razor sharp, passionate, a little reckless, but sincere. Then ask, when people mention you, what 3 words will they remember? Choose 3 words you want to truly radiate. From those answers, choose 3 to 5 traits you will deliberately amplify. For example, blunt honesty, calmness, an experimental spirit, dark humor. And choose 1 to 2 flaws you will give style to instead of hiding. If you're so blunt that you often make people uncomfortable, giving style might mean keeping your honesty but adding finesse. Knowing when to speak, how to speak, and to whom. If you tend to be skeptical, instead of forcing yourself to be always positive, you can use skepticism to examine problems carefully, to be the risk checker on the team, as long as you don't use it to ruin every idea. Style doesn't arrive overnight. It's the result of thousands of small choices, repeated, made consciously. Nietzsche would ask you, today, did you add any stroke that makes your life sharper, clearer, more honest? And the most beautiful thing is this. When you begin to see your life as a work of art, everything changes color. Failure isn't only humiliation. It's a scene that can be re-edited into something powerful. Mistakes aren't only shameful, they're details that can develop character. Boring stretches are no longer dead time. They become transition scenes, preparation for a turning point. You stop seeing yourself as the victim of a script and start seeing yourself as both the character, the screenwriter, and the director. If you've come this far, you may have realized owning yourself, in Nietzsche's spirit, is not a single flash of awakening and then done. It is a beautiful life sentence you pronounce upon yourself. From today until your final day, you will still doubt many times, still want to return to the old place many times. But once you have seen these things even once, and the possibility of turning your life into a work with a distinct essence, it becomes very hard to fall asleep the way you used to. The rest isn't in this video. It lives in the next tiny choice you make after you turn off the screen. Will you keep living as before, or will you begin adjusting, even just one small stroke in the painting of your life?